But we're good for all the shoots.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the January 22nd regular board work session. I'll go ahead and call us to order. We have in attendance Holly Riegelman, Chris Howitt, Brenna Peterbaugh, and myself. We expect that Heather Coleman Cox will join us later into the meeting, and we're missing Sean Farns this evening for an excused absence, although we don't really excuse absences. That's not our job. All right, so with that, we've got a meeting agenda.
I would move to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Chris, second by Holly to approve the meeting agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Our first item is executive session. So the Gresham-Barlow School Board of Directors will now meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing the following personnel pursuant to ORS 192.6602B. Executive sessions are closed to the public. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. For staff in the room, we have Superintendent Tracy Klinger, John Cook, Sarah DuBois, and Michael Sweet. Okay.
There's not a
It's not a big motion. Yeah, it's.
what is it?
Okay, we're back. Are you on the easy place on the spot? Yeah. We sure.
I was going to put it back on. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to reconvene now into our regular work session. Next up is information items. Are we set for the legislative update? Because we are going to have a guest.
I think we should.
Okay. So first up is going to be a legislative update.
It's not on there to actually do a motion, but.
We need to do a motion now, right, Blake?
Oh, we need it.
I
Okay.
think so. There wasn't one on here. Yeah, we'll wait for Sarah.
Right?
Yeah.
Want everyone to come in?
They were gonna do a motion.
We're gonna do
for-
it.
Yeah, I think so.
But yes, they can come in, because it's not.
Yeah, it's not exact.
Yeah,
Public come in and.
Here's your documents for what
Yeah,
I
it's- I find this.
Yeah. Doesn't need that for the wording of the.
Lisa,
He's probably not.
thanks for joining us. Let's get that shared for you.
If Mike coming back, I'm gonna pull this.
Maybe, and then was that, we're just trying to skip it.
Okay. Well, now it looks like nobody wants to bite.
Oh.
I do.
And ID9.
So we're still on
Yeah,
camera.
Yeah, we're
guys.
still on public.
Reconvening into regular work session, but before information items, the board had an opportunity to discuss an item pursuant to ORS 192.6602B. Having had that discussion, I would the board really has three options. We could adopt a recommended decision. I don't see recommended language, but adopt a recommended decision. Or we could defer and request more information. Or we could opt to have a hearing.
And so I would maybe clarify that is that we are adopting the material presented regarding a complaint. No
Sure.
further hearing.
Sure, I'll entertain it. So is that
So I would move to, approve the recommended, adopt the recommendation from the superintendent in regards to the complaint.
And no further hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Holly, second by Brenna. I'm gonna provide some language that I heard from you and then Sarah, and I invite the whole board to correct it. So moved by Holly, second by Brenna to adopt the recommendation presented by district staff. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? All right, now we get to move on to information items with the legislative update. Dr. Klinger, do you want to introduce?
Yes.
this,
What are we doing? We have people in the room. Are they doing another part?
Yeah.
They're later.
They're
in the
later.
agenda.
They're just coming
this
into this. Okay.
is Lisa Merrick from MESD, and she is our government relations, is that the right term?
Yeah.
Advocate, support person. Stacy Michelson was formerly in the role and moved to OSBA. Lisa has taken her place. And so I'll let you kind of take it from here, kind of share what's coming.
Great, that's good. I do have a slide deck. Do you all have access
Mhm.
to that? Okay.
Mhm.
There's a lot of running around before the meeting.
Yeah, I do. Well, we are on the eve of the short session. And I think that this is a dynamic set of information. So I think what I share tonight could be out of date. And, not.
That's well done.
So, I want to open this line of communication up with you just to share some information, kind of a preview of what we're going to be expecting to see during the legislative session. And then, of course, continue to send updates as things change and evolve over the next few months, or couple, really less than 2 months. So I can share the key legislative dates, which is in the second slide.
And we do have the slide on our,
Oh,
as
great.
well, but
Okay.
it's more for
So you
the
can
public
follow.
who might be watching. Yeah, but we have it on ours as well.
Yeah, got it. So, we are about to enter into the short legislative session. The legislature convenes every other year, during odd numbered years for a long session, which is about 6 months long. And then on the even numbered years, they do the short session, which is about 6 weeks. So it's kind of more of a sprint than a marathon of the long session, which is good and bad, but it does mean that legislators have bill limits, which is someone who tracks the legislation. I appreciate not having to track 3,000 bills. So each legislator has a limit of 2 policy bills that they can introduce, and then committees get 5 bills. So there's just kind of a smaller pool of policies to track. And then the legislature is also responsible for passing the budget. And I'll share a little bit more information over the next few slides, but we are entering a challenging budget environment. So that's kind of one of the key topics this upcoming session. So just to go through some legislative dates, last week, the legislature convened for their January legislative days. They do these legislative days throughout, kind of in between legislative sessions, where they really just meet to talk about informational topics, check in on policies that they've passed before. So they just had those last week. And then last Friday was the bill drop deadline, which is when legislators have to introduce their policies. So we'll actually be seeing bills likely in the next week, what is going to be officially introduced. And then the legislative session begins February 2nd, and it has to end by March 9th. And there's a couple of deadlines in between. So the February 4th revenue forecast is a key date. That's going to be the last revenue forecast that they'll look at before they officially pass the budget. And then February 16th is the first chamber deadline. So that means that bills have to pass out of their first policy committee in order to go to the first chamber to get a vote, and then they go through the other chamber. And the second chamber deadline is February 26th. So it's really, really compressed time frame for bills to move through the process. And then the January 2027 is when the long session will start, and the official dates aren't available yet, but that will come out soon. And then the governor can also convene a special session at any time, which is could be a possibility depending on what happens with the budget and the transportation package. So we can go to the next slide. The big topic of this session is really around the state budget and in response to Congress passing HR1, which is the big beautiful bill. Not so beautiful to everyone, but it's causing a decrease in the revenue that the state is receiving because that bill included some tax cuts across a few different income brackets. And it's as a result, we're not getting as much revenue to our state. So the governor and the legislature have gone through some budget exercises to prepare for potential reductions in the budgets that they passed last session. So state agencies right now have prepared a couple of different budget reduction scenarios that they presented back in November. And there was a September revenue forecast, which was it was a lot more, it showed a lot more significant impacts to the state revenue. The December state revenue forecast was a little bit better, and I will go more into detail on that in the next slide. But essentially, it's looking like we're in a better trajectory than we were in the fall, but we will know for sure by February 4th. And so the legislature will officially consider budget reductions after February 4th. And we can go to the next slide. The December forecast showed that the net general fund and lottery resources were up about $318 million. It still showed resources down by about $635 million since the close of session forecast. But based on the numbers that the legislature presented, we believe that we went from about 400 million in the red to $80 million in the red with the state resources. And so based on some other numbers, including that the state will project out a ending fund balance of about 350 million, just to have some funds to help with HR1 implementation and potential wildfire costs. The state budget holds likely about $600 million. And there's currently no corporate or personal kicker forecasted. The corporate activity tax, which funds the Student Success Act, is down about $31 million, but the legislature has been reserving funds in that account. So if needed, they can draw on some of those funds to keep budgets whole. We can go to the next slide. So based on the December forecast, overall, it's good news just to see better news from the September revenue forecast, but we still really need to make a clear and convincing case in the legislature that preserving K-12 budgets is going to be really critical over the upcoming biennium. And because of the HR1 impacts, we are competing with a lot of really important other agency budgets, just due to HR1's impacts on Medicaid and food security, SNAP benefits. Because it changes eligibility to those programs, it's going to have some impacts on our social safety net in the state. And so I think legislators are going to be looking at how they can maybe shore up funds for some of those programs. So it is going to be a tough session in terms of a high number of needs for a lot of different programs. And the state does still have this budget shortfall. We can go to the next slide. One of the, I think a big part of our priorities really is calling on the legislature to really keep K-12 budgets whole this session. And they do have a couple sets of reserves. There's the Education Stability Fund that has a projected balance of $1.261 billion. There are rules for that account that it can only be used for public education, and there's no cap on withdrawals. It was created by constitutional amendment in 2002. We also have the Oregon Rainy Day Fund, which also has a pretty high projected balance of $2.158 billion. That was created by statute in 2007. There are some kind of rules around accessing those funds. They do require a supermajority of the legislature to vote on them, and they have some specific requirements around what the revenue forecast has to show, which is a final forecast showing a 3% decline in revenue for the next biennium, or payroll employment being down 2 consecutive quarters. Or a revenue forecast being down 2% from the close of session estimate. That being said, those triggers can be bypassed and the funds can be accessed by a 3/5 vote in each chamber and if the governor declares an emergency. So there are some
Those conditions? So all three of those conditions, 3/5 in each chamber
Yeah,
and state of emergency?
the triggers can be bypassed with
With
the
those.
3/5 vote and the governor declaring an emergency. So if the conditions aren't quite met, we have this other option to work with the governor. So we know we have these tools available. And I think one of our key messages to legislators is that you have these resources. They've actually used them 9 times since they were established. They accessed the Education Stability Fund during the pandemic. So we've used these resources before, and this is a really important time to use them.
Is it true that there's also a mechanism for them to replenish? Like
Yes.
there's systems so that if you use some of the funds, there's replenishing that automatically.
Yes, exactly. So it will replenish after the next biennium. And so that balance will still grow over time.
Does that replenishment come out of generally collected revenue that we would have depended on? I'm not, yeah, that's the
I don't know
question.
that.
The kicker applies if state revenues exceed which forecast? Do you know? Or is it a forecast that's to exceed?
There's some, I can't remember the exact conditions, but we have a new state economist, and so he's using a different method than the last state economist. I think the kicker is like the delta between what's projected and then what's the actual,
Yeah, right.
in revenue.
It's total collected revenue over that period of time, and the delta is 2%. Over, if you collect more than 2% of what you predicted, then the kicker
The
goes.
rest kicks. I just say, because one of your previous slides said the kicker isn't assumed, but that's neither conservative nor risky as a forecaster. It's just assuming you're gonna get the revenue that you're gonna get and.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
At this stage, so, and they're using slightly different methods to try to have a more accurate, projection, but I think we'll still have to see what the next set of forecasts is like.
How likely is it that it'll meet one of those criterias?
the triggers.
Yeah, one of the triggers.
We got kind of mixed messages after the last revenue forecast, and so when I spoke to the co-chairs, I know they wanted to get a legal opinion and get some guidance from the revenue staff that work for the legislature. So I think they will likely get that kind of expert opinion after the February 4th revenue forecast. So we just won't know for sure until that date, but we'll definitely know more right away. Any other questions about the forecast or?
I guess
reserves?
one other question about the it's a couple slides back, the corporate activity tax. So when you say they have been reserving 100 million, that is money that has come in through the cat tax and they're setting aside instead of pushing it out to schools.
That's correct. Yes, they have a special reserves within that account. And I have to double check the bill, but I don't think there are rules, unlike the other reserves that the legislature has to set aside a certain amount that isn't associated with the Student Success Act. So they have been pretty conservative in holding those resources. But I think we know that they're there, and so we really want to make sure that they're distributing those so that you don't have to take additional cuts. Knowing that you have a lot of classroom facing staff that are paid for through the tax.
We talked about that a little bit when we did our budget presentation in November. That with the ODE's proposal for how to remedy some of the HR1 stuff, that the impact that we anticipated was about $600,000 to SIA, which is from the cap tax. So in theory, it would be, we'd be asking them to utilize some of that stability fund to, yep, that would be the impact for us. Yep.
So if we go to the next slide, I wanted to just highlight some of the anticipated bills we're starting to hear about, but with the deadline having just passed, there'll be a lot more that we'll hear about. I think one of the big bills is going to be the transportation package. If you've seen those headlines, it's kind of been a little bit of journey for this bill, but the state is currently looking at, initially they wanted to look at repealing the transportation. There was a legal opinion that said the legislature cannot repeal a bill that's set to be on the ballot. And so in response now, the Democrat majority is looking at moving that bill to the May election instead of the November election.
You know the reasons for that?
Yes.
Or do you want me to say?
Pretty clear.
The governor doesn't want to have a failed bill on the same ballot as her election. Yeah.
That she put for.
So I'm sure there'll likely be a lot more debate about that policy and whether or not that's legal or ethical. So I think there'll be a lot more conversations around that. There's another bill that's going to try to solidify more protections for school meals for all, just given that the federal government there's been some potential cuts around to school meals and nutrition grants for schools. So they're looking at finding some sort of funding for school meals. Adding some more protections for immigrant and refugee students, requiring districts to notify families and students if ICE is active around their campuses, and then codifying the McKinney-Vento Act into state statute. There's a bill that's going to increase the reporting requirements for chronic absenteeism and attendance. A bill that bans school vouchers. There's one that just came out last week that would abolish the Quality Education Commission and which does a report on how much it would cost to fund quality education in Oregon. And that's a report that's done every 2 years. This bill would have the state contract with a third party to do a report every 8 years. It also added a lot more. It kind of tackled on some bigger issues, including overhauling Division 22. So we're gonna have a few things to say about that policy.
Can I ask about that one?
Yeah,
Or-
please do.
Yeah. Or make sure you ask
Well,
along
no,
the way,
I'm-
apparently.
no, go ahead.
You're like Chris's story
Because
of
I'm-
Oliver's.
I just
Yeah.
have one I'll ask in a minute, but go, Blake.
Okay. Is your perception of that bill that it would reduce the administrative and reporting requirements of districts or expand them with the Division 22 adjustment?
I believe it would expand them.
Okay.
And so I think the initial feedback that we'll probably provide to the legislators is to really look at what they've done with the accountability bill and making sure that further changes are in alignment with that. It wasn't in the bill, but as a part of that accountability package, the Department of Ed committed to try to streamline the grants and reporting requirements. And so it feels a little bit contradictory for them to be doing something a little bit different and new. And so I think kind of trying to align it with what the Department of Education is doing is the best route to go.
Two-parter, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Increasing state reporting around chronic absenteeism and attendance, is there a chance that those bills get merged or those efforts get merged? Like, or is it similar parties who are introducing those?
No, there's
Okay.
one is the legislator, and then the quality education bill is coming out of the committee. It's a committee bill on the Committee for Public Education Appropriations.
Which is, that's Ricky is
Mhm.
Representative Ruiz is,
He's the chair,
Chair.
one of the chairs.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think they'll be probably separate topics, but hopefully everyone's kind of talking as they are continuing to practice.
I see on my lips and.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah. Let's just kind of put a stick into it and say the quality education model will never be funded. It will never be in place. They don't even write a good report for it. Why are we even playing with it? I had to look up when we first started at 1999, 27 years. And all we've gotten is ineffective reports. And they look at it and say, well, I mean, right now they're saying that it would cost billions to make it work. And some of even what they talked about back 27 years ago aren't the things that we can and know that we could do now. So why?
Has it ever been
No,
met?
no, it never.
Just clarifying.
Yeah, it's
Wasn't the closest was
Thought-
not the
about 6 years
2
ago.
year, yeah.
20,
Oh,
no,
that-
2025.
2020,
Was it?
there was an
Five.
article that just said like the
Yeah.
one time that it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year.
But it was even for a number of years, they weren't even doing
Yeah.
doing reports.
But they called it
The
fully
other money.
funded,
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
hasn't
Yeah.
been fully funded.
not the QEM, but just
Yeah.
schools were fully.
Yeah.
Schools were, right?
The Volby.
And there,
grants.
yeah, and there were a number of
Okay.
years where there was no reports written. And so it to me, it's one of those where it's a distraction. Is what it is for me.
The
That-
QEM or this.
The QEM, sorry, the QEM. Because it really, there are other things that we're doing because the QEM, it was very lofty. And then it had too many moving parts. And then it had a lot of money that people were not willing to, what are we gonna get from that? And we've done some things. But that out there, I think becomes we'll just do the QEM. And no, we won't. But it distracts from, we are doing things and stop pretending that we're gonna do the QEM because it's not gonna work. It's expensive and they're never gonna put the money towards it. So, and that even was conversation that we had pretty extensively with OSBA. How much are we gonna continue to support that as a priority? Was that just distracting from other things that we could make progress on and not necessarily that? So I'm off my soapbox now.
I'm,
The biggest thing with QEM was smaller class size.
Yeah.
That won't ever happen.
yeah,
We don't have enough buildings and money. So,
well, and I think. I am curious, I'm just gonna table this one about responding to immigration enforcement, what demands that's gonna put on our administrators to assess and what liability we bear. In that, but I'm tabling that for just a second because. I'm my concern, and I don't know if MESD and in general folks are in agreement with this is. I understand asking for more revenue. And I understand that demand. Education in general has been very resistant to cost containment conversations. And the lowest hanging fruit of cost containment is reducing the unfunded mandates that education has put on us from Salem. Because that reduces the administrative burden that, and most of these folks have OEA in their back pocket. And I would think that OEA would also be in alignment with a desire to reduce the reporting requirements or the the mandated requirements, that is the lowest hanging cost containment strategy to me, and none of this addresses that.
Yeah.
Based on what,
And from what I believe, Oregon funds schools higher than a lot of other states, so it's not like we don't get funding. But it's directed most of the time out of our
requirements
control.
with it
Yeah.
are much more severe
Mhm.
Yes.
and not always in
So
alignment
we might
with
not
what's
need more
benefiting
revenue if we
kids.
don't have so many
Right, right.
unfunded mandates.
And it
That
is
should be the
interesting
push.
on the immigration enforcement in and around schools. I was going through some of my paperwork recently. There was a very good handbook that NSBA put out in 2017 on that very issue in 2017. They were talking about it. And so I'm gonna find it, make sure that we all have it as a conversation, but it had things in there that they started doing and then didn't fully get implemented because of 2019, 2020. So that was an interesting thing that we were talking about it then, and I don't remember there being a lot of conversation here in Oregon about it. I think it was more of an East Coast issue at the time. It was moving this way, but we weren't. And then we got distracted by COVID.
And I guess my question along that is what's the expectation? I mean, districts are not notified in advance. So
That's my.
how can you
There.
require, yeah, a district to notify it? Has nothing to do with whether we want to or not, but if we don't know or can't confirm, when we don't have staff standing out on our corners, where do we have money to
It's hard
afford?
to confirm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that seems unrealistic.
And the other, I mean, that is one of my primary concerns is they're not supposed to, don't have to communicate with us. They don't have to communicate with local police agencies. So there's no way to say it did or didn't happen. You're relying on social media. So then we're gonna notify the public based on social media evidence, and that hangs us out there.
Yeah, wrong.
In FBI, they don't have to notify us of anything either. There's other federal enforcement agencies that don't have to. I understand the political implications here. But if I can't verify it, then I'm doing nothing but spreading rumors like social media.
We're adding to the scare and that's not helpful.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful feedback, which I've been working with OSBA and COSA. I'd say a lot of districts have similar concerns. I think we want to make sure there's reasonable expectations on districts. I think if it's one thing if ICE is trying to enter a school and
Then we have
you
rules about that over
you
there.
have, and most districts already do have those protocols. It's another if they're operating across the street or off campus and, that's a lot more difficult.
And
to
what we don't
take a role.
have, we have no means to enforce anything off of our own grounds.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I would just, professional educators, you have opinions too, and your professional ethics often demand of you to stay quiet about them, but I think the board needs your help too, to know what you're feeling and thinking and how you're processing these, so.
And how you think they'll affect the district,
Mhm. Mhm.
good or bad.
Mhm.
I think if you want my ethical and professional opinion, you touched on where the efficiencies could be. The amount of reporting that we have to do, the Division 15 and Division 22, the unfunded mandate, Senate Bill 3, all of those things hamstring us a great deal. And over the years, if you look at budgeting in general, pre-2016, you got a lump sum money. And then you had some flexibility on how you applied that. You could address different initiatives. Now, everything comes with strings attached. It gives us no real creative flexibility or professional license to say this is what's best for our kids in our community. Even if we go out and get the input, we may not be able to do it because of the rules. And then that's disingenuous to your populace. So I think that's my ethical and professional concern.
And further damages trust with the public, right?
Yes.
Well, it seems
the
like
local
then
level.
with every string that comes is a 5,000-page report about what you did with the money.
Right.
And that report costs money to write the report and do the report, that the money should be going to the students.
I think the other thing, like you highlighting, any potential increase in Division 22, as we're facing budget cuts specifically, which we know we are,
Mhm,
just adds to that, like,
mhm.
what are the things that we're not gonna be able to meet?
Yeah.
And what are the decisions that we're gonna have to make about how we approach a decision around a budget cut? Knowing it may put us out of compliance and just those choices,
Mhm.
as you're also dealing with reduced financial resource, are really challenging.
Mhm.
Well, at some point, you have to choose to be out of compliance over dismantling a student's education.
Mhm.
And it feels like we're right at that point. So the state either has to acknowledge that and loosen those standards, or we'll be out of compliance and it is what it is, like,
Cause right now it's more
because kids are first.
accountability.
So we're gonna
more
keep saying
funded.
kids are
Yeah.
first, kids are first,
Mhm.
despite what the state says. In our district, kids are first. And I mean, I will keep saying that. I think our board believes that. I won't speak for anybody else, but
Mhm. I'll agree with you.
I think that's pretty safe.
I think we're here
Yeah.
for kids.
Yeah.
So if it feels like it's against kids,
A specific
I'm
example,
less worried about being out of compliance than doing what's right for kids.
in the budget wrestling that we've been doing, and it's been a substantial amount, is that measure 98. Do you cut here and does that end up making us not eligible for measure 98? So then you keep one thing, but you have to increase class sizes over here. And how do you balance all of that? It's just another one of the examples.
Yeah,
So this might be a good opportunity to talk about February 13th.
yes. I think that- Save all of your comments and ideas, we can skip ahead, so we have an advocacy day on Friday, February 13th.
Mm.
We're gonna bring all the luck we can, and there'll be breakfast, we'll have a presentation and, some more information. I'm sure I'll have different information in the next month, and then we'll we'll walk over to the Capitol and meet with lawmakers. So this is open to any of the MASD component district board members. So we'll follow up with a form if you want to sign up. We'd love to see you down there.
When's the deadline on that?
We can accommodate a lot of people probably up until like a week before, just to help keep kind of a good head count for food. But we can definitely welcome last minute additions to it.
So what does that look like for people that attend? Like in terms of like, what do they have to do?
So we'll start in the morning to kind of do like a basic training. I'll provide a little bit more background information on the legislature and kind of the hot topics. And then there'll be time for boards to meet in groups to prepare for the meetings with lawmakers. And then we'll walk over to the Capitol, and we'll meet between 12 and 3 with the lawmakers over there. And if you have, I'll put out, a pretty robust schedule for people that want to come. And so you might be able to sit in on committee meetings. It kind of depends on what's going to be on that day. But if there's like a bill hearing that is related to education, there might even be an opportunity to sign up to testify. It's a little harder to plan out that far just because agendas get posted like 24 to 48 hours in advance, but there'll be a lot to take in and watch and a lot of things to do. But I think most importantly, we'll be meeting with the lawmakers that represent the districts here.
And I plan to go, and I would prefer to not go by myself.
So that is the birthday of one of my child, and so I would have to again say,
Bring her along.
my elected position is more important than your birthday, which has happened a few times over the years, but. Yeah,
Celebrate just something.
we'll just do another.
If you could give a reminder as a board, maybe like
When do we
Thursday
need to
the
let,
5th or so, and that way. we
yeah,
can
when do we need to let
walk
you
it
know?
down.
Yeah, February 5th seems like a good deadline. I'll just give
Okay.
us time to make sure.
Okay.
Can food for everyone.
To let
but-
him know, and then the 13th is what it is, but yeah.
Yeah, so at our
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, And is this just for board members to go with, or how far out are you sweeping this net?
We are just doing board members, but if you have
Oh,
kids.
I
with
just was
you,
curious,
that's
yeah.
Fine, I think, or if there's student representatives on the board, we would welcome those kids too.
The only unpopular thing I'll say about that, I would bring student reps, I would not bring kids. Because the tendency then is for the legislator to want to engage with your child.
Mm.
And your young child, and they don't want to listen to our conversation. And so there's a time and place to bring your kids, they absolutely need to go and be aware of this environment. But if that's a day where we're supposed to go and advocate, then I would say we don't take our family
Not-
with us because it's.
Go to school.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I do
Yeah.
think that,
I mean, some people think that's a good opportunity to bring their kids, show them what legislation is like,
Yeah.
and the legislators love that. They
Yeah.
wanna just talk with the kids then. And that's our time to talk about their education of the kids and not just the
Mhm.
kids, so.
and I do think we have to also look at the long game of, like, yes, this is an opportunity that's about this year, but it's actually about the years to come as well.
Mhm.
And so I think as many people that can go and just kind of get a taste, that's part of why I'm committed to go, like, let's learn how this works. Let's figure out what we don't know. Let's figure out how to be really great advocates. Helps us for next year and the year after. Like this advocacy isn't gonna go away. And so I think the more we can start to get comfortable with that, we'll be doing right by our
This is
students.
the beginning of a lot more, and I think you've raised a lot of really important points that we'll have to keep bringing up, that we need to make sure we can stretch out these dollars as far as we can to serve students, keep reducing the administrative burdens, keep making sure we're working towards more quality education. for
And our
students.
electeds do want to hear from us. Like, that is one thing I am learning. They
Mhm.
do want to hear from us.
Mhm.
So there's that.
Yeah. So we hope to see you there.
You wanna go back? We jumped ahead.
We did jump ahead a little bit. I think I did touch on most of these. It's just one slide back, Sarah. I just wanted to kind of highlight the challenges and opportunities ahead of us. So I know I named this, the HR1 cuts are gonna really impact human services. So that's gonna be a big topic of discussion in this session. The co-chairs do have the co-chairs of the budget committee do have some reluctance to use reserves, just as they look ahead at potential budget impacts in the future biennium. They don't wanna dip too much in reserves and not have enough for the next biennium. So I think just continuing to express how important it is this session, and that kind of gives everyone more time to plan ahead for the next biennium. And then there is gonna be a conversation around disconnecting from the federal tax code. Because HR1 implemented these new tax cuts for different tax brackets, it also did some pretty popular things like not taxing overtime and the no tax on tips. So I think it's gonna be a pretty challenging conversation whether or not the state does want to disconnect from the federal tax code. But that is gonna be a big topic, and it's gonna be happening simultaneously as the budget conversation is happening. So that'll be pretty interesting and a very like dynamic situation. And then we have the election year. So lots of elections in November, including for governor. So that'll be a really big race to watch moving forward. And then I think a lot of opportunities that you've talked about today, continuing to engage legislators on the unfunded mandates. And I think a lot of legislators know how much they're funding education and they feel like it's a lot, but they're not getting exactly the return on investment they're hoping for. So I think continuing to engage with them on that to explain, like, you do fund these dollars, but then there's all these other requirements that tie up the funding. So it's not necessarily going directly to the classroom. Continuing to talk about PERS. And I think when we're also looking at a state by state comparison of how much they fund education, states do fund pensions differently. And so it's hard because it's not an apples to apples comparison. And so I think if we can get a little bit more kind of drill down that information where we can better understand how PERS is impacting the education budgets, we might have a better sense of where we rank as a state. And then there's also potential for bold actions, which can be good or bad. A lot of states are in a similar position to us where they're seeing declining enrollment and really high cost drivers for education and trying to grapple with how to do the cost containment. And so I think that can lead to some good ideas, but there can also be some interesting ideas that come forward in terms of how to manage that. So I think just, staying vigilant to those. And this is a time for us to bring forward ideas, to really look at how the state distributes dollars, making sure that we're, kind of maybe revisiting the weighted student funding formula or looking at the poverty measures that we use to distribute dollars. So I think continuing to bring forward these ideas and the very real experiences that you see students have. This is the time to bring this forward. Lots to do over the next year. With that's kind of the highlights for where we are now, but I'll definitely send more updates to the superintendents to share with you all as we navigate the session. I'm sure there'll be a lot more news tomorrow and every day beyond that.
And probably by the time you get it to me and I get it to you, it'll change
So
and we'll be
slightly
getting you the
out.
next information.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think one other thing to highlight too is the federal education budget passed the House today. And it's a little higher than flat funding, but it's still probably not going to feel like that to you all, but I think there could have been much steeper cuts. So I'll include some more information in that.
And that protected some of the other titles.
Yes.
Is there any risk of Oregon being excluded from any federal funding?
We're gonna find out. I think that will the Trump administration has signaled interest in withholding funds from sanctuary states that have sanctuary cities. I'm sure there'll be a lot of legal challenges. So I know the state attorney general is ready to act on that.
Do you know when that happens? So a federal direction, state appeal. At the point of appeal, are those funds released or are they tied up until the appeal is concluded? Do you have any?
I think there's a few different options. I'm trying to think of what happened with SNAP, but I think it does have to go through the courts still. So I think they can end up tied up for maybe a short amount of time. But yeah, well, there's some unknowns there, but I think the funding package that's moving through the Senate would distribute funds in July. But it's a larger appropriations package that also includes funding for Homeland Security and ICE. So there's gonna be a large debate on the Senate side too. Because there's like 4 agency budgets in one appropriation bill. So it might be in the Senate a little bit, as they have some debates.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We want to brief recess?
Yes.
Okay, how about a 10-minute recess? Back at 7:55. Food coma. That. All right, we're coming back out of recess, reconvening. Next up is social science curriculum adoption with Tim Collins and Peggy Ladd.
Yeah, we're here to update you. ODE reviewed social science curriculum in 2025, and this is an adoption year. So for use in classrooms, new curriculum use in classrooms 26, 27. So we're here to update you on the adoption process.
And Sarah, do you have the,
Slide
Nope.
deck.
the one right before MTSS?
Yeah, I opened yours. Both of these say MPSS.
I think I still have it in the,
I say in the board docs, it's the right one.
Yeah, number
yeah,
7.
it is.
Wherever I opened. Nope, that's the MPSS one. Where's the curriculum? What you sent me?
I sent it too. So.
This is 2022. You said.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But.
We should.
Here we go.
Yeah.
This is confusing.
Sent by the other Heidi Ladd.
Obviously, I had to add it because I added it to the agenda.
Yeah.
Great.
We're hiding it from Sarah.
Okay, so our next slide.
Yeah,
After this one?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're here.
so this one's just, let's go back one. Just grounding this in the board conditions, focusing on achievement. And how we can promote achievement through the adoption of high quality instructional materials is really the focus of the social studies adoption, like any adoption. So next slide, this adoption process is going to look very similar to the adoption that you've seen before. Number one, we want it to be collaborative, and not only with the teachers on the team, but also as we bring in students and the community. We want to make sure that all voices are heard in the process. Right now, well, we'll give you an update where we are right now. As far as grounded and effective and equitable teaching practices, at the beginning of each of our adoption cycles, we sit down and take a look at what are the current best practices within each content area. And those change over time in terms of how students learn, best practices within content areas. Recently, we've been really focused on elevating discourse and student speech, and the use of reasoning within that discourse. And so you'll see that as you start looking at curriculums, especially the springtime when we bring this to you. But really, we want to make sure that the materials reflect what we know is best practice for kids, engage them in the content. Prioritizes the variabilities of our learners. We want to make sure that whether we're talking about students that are EML or special ed or tag or anything in between, that the curriculum that we choose is able to meet the needs of all of our students, not just most. And so really thinking about how does the curriculum that we choose elevate those needs, and how do we use those tools and resources to meet the needs of our students. And more recently, really focusing on our DLI program, making sure that the tools and resources that we use are available in multiple languages, especially Spanish, so that they can be used as a part of our DLI program instead of purchasing an additional curriculum or something that's separate. Our students can use the same content, the same curriculum, whether it's English or Spanish as they're going through, which helps our students and our teachers in the process of teaching content. And then finally, number 4, center student voice. We're in the process right now of testing and piloting the curriculum in our classroom setting so that our student can actually tell us, here's what we like, here's what we don't like, here's what makes sense, here's what doesn't make sense. So really giving students the chance both within a pilot process to give us feedback, and then also providing chances for other students who aren't in the pilot to also provide feedback as they have a chance to look through materials and the curriculum. So really centering student voice because they're the ones that we want to focus on as we go through. So that's our adoption process in a nutshell, pretty similar to the process that we've seen up tonight. Next.
So some of the factors to share with you is we have 38 educators involved in this adoption process. 26 are elementary and 12 are secondary, and that includes English instruction teachers, DLI teachers, instructional coaches, administrators, EML specialists, and special education coaches. And so the number of curriculum that we're reviewing in kindergarten through second grade, we're engaging in an independent adoption process. So what that means is we're looking at using our literacy curriculum, Wonders, which addresses some of the social science standards, and K through 5 addresses some of the social science standards, but looking at adopting Wonders as our social science curriculum, and then providing supplemental materials and lessons to go along with that curriculum. And we're working alongside CORE, an educational a company that's supporting us in developing lessons that go along with those supplemental materials. And we have teachers who are reviewing the standards And we're looking at which standards we need to go more deeply into and reviewing picture books and curated resources that we can use to teach the standards that we can't teach fully from our literacy curriculum. And what that does for K-2 teachers is instead of, so they have a literacy curriculum, a math curriculum, a health curriculum, a social science curriculum and a science curriculum and social emotional learning. So what this would do is they would be able to teach most of the social science standards in their literacy block, and which is unanimously elementary curriculum coordinators and people who are on our social science team last year voted that that would be the best option for us. So at some point, what I'll do is I'll bring forward those supplementary materials, including those books. So you guys have an opportunity to review what we've been looking at and are proposing to use it for supplementary materials. And we're kind of been talking about what that process might look like to share this with you. We were engaged in that same process for 3rd through 5th grade, but we found that the depth of the standards were not able to meet those standards through additional picture books and resources. So we found that we really do need to adopt a curriculum, be able to teach those standards. So we had to pivot our plan pretty quickly and start reviewing curriculum. And it's going pretty smoothly though.
And then for 6 through 12, we started off with a 6 to 12 contingent for our high school folks because we're working on Senate Bill 3 and personal finance. A lot of the folks who are in social science are also involved in the personal finance curriculum adoption for us right now. So we put social science on hold for a year. We're to start the high school process actually in March. So we'll be postponing that adoption just by 1 year. Our 6th to 8th grade team started in October, taking a look at 7 different curriculum packages that had been approved by ODE. From that 7, we narrowed it down to 4 that we thought were the best packages that aligned with best practices. We heard from those 4 publishers, and then we're in the process right now of piloting 2 that based on the publisher presentations and a deeper review of the materials, our middle school team said these look like the best options for us to move forward. So middle school is moving forward right now. We'll be starting the high school process in about 2 months once we finalize some of the personal finance pieces and get that ready to launch. We talked about this just a little bit already, but Heidi mentioned the new social science standards were adopted about a year ago. And then from that, the state then took a look at different curriculum packages, finalized which curriculums were going to be approved by the state, and those are the ones that we've been working with. Heidi also alluded to the social science for a better world. So the coach for MESD, Brad Parker, actually started the process of unpacking the social science standards last year for us. So we've actually had teams of teachers working with Brad starting a year in advance to unpack the standards. And so the adoption process has been just a continuation of that work that our teachers started a year ago, which has been really a nice foundation for our teachers to build from.
And through that opportunity, our teachers were kind of trained in that process of using curated resources and picture books to teach the standards because he engaged us in that and in part of that. So that's kind of how they gained some of that skill.
Yeah, so I think that covers that slide. Timeline is next.
Yeah, so last school year, we started that process we just talked about with social science for a better world with MESD and dove into those standards. We got to learn from local tribal members, and then also after we learned from local tribal members, then we would dive into the tribal history that ODE has available for us. We learned from a local person who was a Holocaust survivor, and then we the Jewish Holocaust Museum brought us some picture books and helped us prepare lessons. So it was a really powerful experience, and it got our teachers very engaged in the social science process last year. And then this year we started out by reviewing the new standards, and MESD and ODE took us through that process. And then, did you want to take the
Sure.
first?
So based on the work in October, our teams put together what's called a look for tool. So taking a look at the standards that the state put together and what our teams identified as the key ideas within those standards, that put together a document that said, what are the things that we should be looking for inside every curriculum package that we're going to evaluate. So they put together a look for tool that said, for example, does it come in multiple languages? Does it come with resources to help with teaching students on IEPs? Does it come with resources that can elevate project-based curriculum or project-based options and those sorts of things? So the Look For tool was created back in November that was used to evaluate the different packages. So at middle school went from 7 down to 4, down to 2. That Look For tool has been used as part of that evaluation process to see, do these things align with what we see as most important inside any curriculum package, which then leads us to step number 4 right now at the middle school level. And actually just today, our middle school team met to do pilot project number 1 that will last for about 4 weeks. And then we'll bring our team back together, give them a short training on curriculum number 2. And then they'll start another 4-week process to sample some of the lessons with students inside the classroom settings.
And I think for 3 and 4 for elementary, I explained a lot of that. We reviewed the picture books and the lesson plan development and pivoted. And then now we're going to need to use the ODE's IMET material, the review tool to look at our wonders. And we'll be responsible for doing that since we're not using one of the approved curriculum for K-2.
So who's core? Who is that?
Oh, Core Incorporated, they are MESD contracted with them to provide coaching and educational services to districts, and we are using them to help us create those lesson plans that go along with our social science curriculum. And so they have consulted with us online, and then they've sent out a representative, an instructional coach to support us and that
Where are they
lesson
based
plan
out of?
develop. I think I have to look into that. They're not local though. They had to.
I'm always curious about
Yeah.
the selection process for contracts like that. That's all.
Yeah, and
What
that
are they
was
called?
something that
Core
we,
what?
Core Incorporated, and that was something that was made available to us through MESD, and it's not something that we had to
Yeah.
pay for the resources, but so we met with them and let them know what we need, what our needs were, and they were just responding to some of the support that we
Okay.
felt like. Okay.
And a quick acronym alert, just in case you're curious, IMET stands for Instructional Materials Evaluation Tool. So as you're looking at back to what is IMET, that's what it stands for. Very cryptic, I know, but I was just thinking not everyone here has probably seen that set of letters before and what it actually stands for. So every year when ODE puts together a review of the curriculum materials for that adoption content area, they put together an instructional materials evaluation tool. So science has an IMET tool, language arts has an IMET tool, world language has an IMET tool. And each year the tool is based on the standards that were adopted that previous spring.
So since we are doing an independent adoption, we will need to use that tool on our wonders curriculum.
We've not done an independent adoption before.
Yeah, I was gonna
This
say,
is
I feel like
unusual.
last time we did a curriculum adoption, it came up that it was even an option. And I hadn't heard about it
Yeah, we
before
didn't
then,
talk
so
about it.
it's, yeah, interesting that now we're doing it.
So Tracy, for science, we did do an independent adoption for.
Oh, because we did that's
Yes.
true.
It was not as much work as what you're doing for the K2 adoption.
Mhm.
Because it
Because that was a curriculum that was like open source.
was an open source
Curriculum.
curriculum.
Where this is creator.
Yeah, we're creating our own
Essentially.
curriculum, and they're doing
So
an
that
amazing
meant it
job.
was one that was just not on the list that we were getting approved.
Correct,
That's
so,
what I'm Understanding.
yeah, so it used to be, and ODE just changed this, it used to be that any publisher had to pay, I don't know, like $5,000 in order to be considered underneath the adoption process. For the open source options, open source means they don't have money, so they couldn't put their materials for it to be evaluated, so they didn't make the list. But you can still evaluate according to the tool. So yeah, so we had a full curriculum package that the state didn't evaluate, but we evaluated using their
Yeah.
evaluation tool and said it meets.
Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, I think we're on the next step, Sarah. Next slide.
And I misspoke. There are many core incorporated.
That's right. I Googled,
Not sure
but
whether-
I didn't trust my own.
I will just share that I
We're not
misspoke
sure where they're from.
or didn't
They're
read
not from
enough.
here.
Not from around
Don't believe
here.
they're from Ohio.
Okay.
Or at least-
So, oh, we do K2, 3, 5. We've covered most of this already.
Yeah, we have. So we're gonna continue our independent adoption process and our lesson plan development. We're leaning into our talk site right routine and vocabulary routine, which I've kind of brought to y'all before, but it's a evidence-based literacy routine. And so Those lessons will live in literacy. And resource curation, we have the tribal history lessons that ODE provides for us, and they're also translated in Spanish. And aligning our lessons to our literacy curriculum, even in our social science adoption, the curriculum adoption, we're going to take those materials and align as much as we can within literacy. Yeah, making sure we have been consulting with ODE and making sure we're meeting those requirements, and we'll be piloting the lessons from whatever curriculums we select to pilot, and then also our lessons plans that we're developing for K through 2. Okay.
For grade 6 through 8, we're piloting right now a curriculum called TCI. And then next month we'll be piloting a curriculum called Imagine Learning, and we'll be able to get links out to you, so you can actually take a look at those, just like anyone in the community, access resources, look at the curriculum, peruse the materials and different sorts of things that they have, browse the online platforms that are a part of the curriculum packages. But we'll be doing the pilots right now, and we're also in the process of putting pieces together to gather both student and community input for those that aren't involved in those pilot classes specifically. And we'll be getting that information to you as well, so you can participate. The goal is to bring the first reading to you in April, so you can do a final read in May, as far as the adoption is concerned.
Just a thought that just came to me, and you
Sure.
can completely disregard it if you'd like. I won't be offended at all. I know gathering student and community voice has been somewhat of a challenge to get people. I know you guys have,
Yes.
I've seen you at basketball games, at our board meetings, you've tried all the things. Our community forums have been really successful, and I'm wondering if this committee, the 38 people, if they were willing to be a part of a forum where people could come and hear their thoughts about it and then ask questions and review curriculum, if that might be better attended. But it's just a random
Right.
thought, so.
Are you able to view
Like I said.
the materials online?
Yes. But I think what Holly's talking about is
They've had
having
it.
people
Like
who,
when you did the math one, you went to games and had people,
Yeah.
or like
Yes.
the.
They did the
literacy.
health one.
What do you
Yeah.
like about it?
Yeah.
Because they could engage with people who did a more in-depth, like, I mean, even for me, I sat down at a basketball game and it's like, I'm flipping through a book, but I'm clearly not reading it.
Yeah, what am I
I'm
looking
not trying to teach it. It's
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
I don't even, it's hard to know what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
If there was engagement with that group that has done more in-depth search, I wonder if there would be more engagement because there was conversation.
One thing that we did for elementary math is we went to conferences. So
Yeah.
parents were coming through the doors for conferences, and then the members from the coaches that were on the adoption team and supporting teachers were the people engaging, and we were able to get a lot of feedback through that. So we might be able to do that. So there are a couple schools that do spring conferences. We've thought about going to those schools as one of our community engagements.
and I do think
But
that
yeah.
secondary materials might be a little more intimidating perhaps than elementary, and so maybe having a voice.
Big book.
Exactly. It's like the National
It is
Geographic,
like
right?
three of them, it's like,
Pictures.
choose the best. Okay,
Yeah.
this one's with prettier pictures. I don't know.
Mhm.
No, I think that's excellent feedback that we can explore.
I just think the engagement with that
Yeah.
group who went more in depth might entice people to come.
Who are using it, who are piloting it, and
Yeah, because then they can ask
Mhm.
those people
Mhm.
the questions and
Mhm.
why they like it better, and they can hear the feedback from, I mean, they're not teachers. So like I can review curriculum, but I am not an educator. And so I don't know how well it's gonna work to teach or not. Like I can't give input on that. So if they're hearing from those educators, what's beneficial about that, they just might be more engaging. So
And maybe
idea.
even experiencing part of a lesson, right? Like having some.
Yeah. just a little bit more
we'll
interactive.
set up some desks, have a
Like
little
I said,
mini
you can
school.
completely disregard that
That's right.
idea. It just came to me at the moment and I thought I would share. So
Now my mind's rolling, like, what can we do with this?
Mhm.
Right?
options are endless.
That's right.
It's a good idea.
I think I heard Tim say he's gonna do a lesson for
Yeah.
people.
I
He's
think
teaching.
that
We'll do that.
I'd do that in a heartbeat.
I know you would.
I know.
Actually.
That's right. But I do think that provides an opportunity to engage in a different way as opposed to just like, I don't even know what I'm
And
looking
make
at.
them feel like they have input in curriculum is kind of a hot topic. It can be a hot topic.
Yes.
Social
And
science.
yes,
curriculum.
and so
Maybe.
this could be an interesting way to build community trust and have some collaborative information.
But I will take that back to a secondary team and ask, like, Is this a possibility? What does this look like? Because our secondary team, our middle school folks, with the TCI curriculum that they're looking at right now, are very excited to try it with their students. And actually, there's a couple of teachers at their buildings who weren't a part of the committee, but they're like, can I look at this as well? Can we like try it beyond just like this little group? So our teachers are really excited to try some of these new materials and see how they work, get kids' feedback. So I think if parents could experience some of what it looks like, I think that would be a beneficial piece. And I've got, like I said, teachers that are excited to like, let's try this, let's get in
Yeah.
and do the stuff.
And we do have teachers that review curriculum and think they're gonna like one until they actually use it with students and realize,
Yeah.
you know, so that's why
Absolutely.
piloting is a part of the process.
Yes. I like it.
There you go. This is the only thing I might have
Give you
tonight.
this town hall.
but there-
Yeah, other questions?
No, general comment, which I know everybody's looking for. No, you pointed to achievement, and you're right, as a board condition, and one of the critical parts of that is, it's just critical thinking. And that's the evaluation of what students can achieve, is if they can think critically. And in today's day and age, and I know we've got an AI policy coming up, but we may not get to tonight, but, just in the evaluation process, I'll be curious to hear how staff think they can invoke some critical thinking and ability to look at a period of time or a policy or a component of civics and see it from multiple angles and consider for themselves what it means.
Can I also just give a little soapbox on that? I think the dialogue and being able to see things from two perspectives is immensely important. I think that where we have to be cautious is that teachers are removing their own opinions and being non-biased, which is really hard. It's very hard, but that's important. And I know that it's not always happening. So I would just encourage you guys to make sure that trickles down to staff and that they know that this isn't an opportunity for them to share how they feel about history or sex education and that's where parents get concerned, right? But it's opening up the dialogue for the discussion and being able to critically think about both sides and how that affects somebody else, even if it's not what they believe or how they feel or whatever. That part is really important, so.
Good feedback.
Pieces of information I
Yeah.
get tonight.
So,
Yes, Chris.
yes. So I loved social studies in high school. That's what we called it back then, social studies. right?
Social science.
I
they
know,
switched
I
it at
know,
some
I
point.
know. And so I'm really excited about this. I mean, I want to go to one of these sessions and actually be a part of it. But as I'm looking at it, that's kind of one of my questions is how are we engaging the community voice? You know, how are we getting, because math is math. It's numbers and you add them together and you get a number. Science is science. Social science brings in all of that cultural and history and who am I and how do I interact with other people? And so it does have that opportunity for very robust conversation and also for a little bit of fear and trepidation. What are you teaching? How are you teaching it? Where is it coming from? That's the big one. So I think even more so in this process, how are we truly getting a multiple of community voices? And whether that means, I don't think I want you standing outside of Fred Meyer saying, have you heard about it? But it is, you know, how do we have, so parents, families, people who are engaging with their kids, so they're not surprised later. I think that's kind of the bigger thing, that this goes through what we feel like is a very robust process and evaluation and looking at it from a curriculum instruction viewpoint. And then it may feel like a surprise when it's not to parents, family members and others. How are they engaged so that they're not hearing a message that's not the message that we're showing in the curriculum? Does that make sense? And just getting them excited about doing this. And then my other sort of comment with that as well is how frequently do we update the social science curriculum? Again, math is math, sort of science changes,
Not
but
boring.
social, yeah.
Change it.
Yeah, But
There's
social
math and there's
science,
math.
yeah, but social science seems like there's components that bring into the bigger picture.
Mm.
You know, what I learned in some of it kind of changed because we didn't have the full conversation.
So the standards are on a 7-year cycle.
Mhm.
And so the interesting piece is, right, when the standards are adopted, 7 years of history will have passed by the time the next standards come around, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
history continues to change and evolve.
Mhm.
But I will say, as you look at the standards, I think one of the key elements is thinking about multiple perspectives
Mhm.
and how do we tell the story and who's telling the story.
Right,
And so it's allowing kind of that broader picture and helping more students see themselves within that historical
Mhm.
narrative.
Mhm.
And on the team itself, being really intentional about having a multiple perspective of voices to talk about and evaluate how do we elevate the stories and help tell the complete picture, and not in a negative or I don't know if biased ways is what I'd say, but trying to help students understand there are multiple perspectives on all of these events and how do we have civil discourse
Mhm.
around what these things look like. And even though we might disagree, there's ways to disagree respectfully and ways to disagree in healthy sorts of ways. And so how do we model those sorts of dialogues and those sorts of discussion, which gets back to that critical thinking around how do we elevate those pieces and allow those voices to be heard?
well, and I think part of it then is you sort of touched on that a little bit as well. The history was presented by someone from their viewpoint, and we're getting better at, are we including the other viewpoints? And so when we go back and say, well, this is what I learned, why is it different? Because we didn't have all the voices. And I think that's sometimes important. We're not changing the history, we're not changing the interaction, we're not changing it, but we're saying these voices were left out. And there's lots of examples that you can have of that, where we learned it one way, why is it different now? And well, it's different because we have these other voices that are a part of it. And I think that's probably key in any social science adoption, is knowing that even whatever we adopt, like you just said, it's gonna be 7 years. Stuff happened in 7 years, and maybe something was found out that affected what we thought we knew. That
A
was,
good example of that is tribal history.
Yeah,
Is
that's what I
written
was
by
thinking of.
local tribes.
well,
and
tribal
they're
history and
continuing
Black
up-
history.
Update.
Mhm,
Yeah, and
mhm.
some of the curated resources are from Oregon Black pioneers. So we're
Mhm,
using local
mhm.
resources as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
But your question about when was our last adoption?
Mhm.
So middle and high school got new social studies curriculum 7-ish years ago.
2019.
Mhm.
Elementary, it's been a long, long time.
Yeah.
And to that point, I think that is part of why a really literacy focused K2 program is so important, because getting kids to read has to be a priority in K2. And so it just gives you different content to utilize as a part of reading instruction, knowing that that's really our priority
Well,
there,
and it's the
which will
critical-
let us use it also.
It's
not
critical
one more
thinking,
thing.
critical
Yeah.
reading, and knowing where to get additional resources
Yeah.
with that, so.
Probably more of a standards conversation, so, but the other component would be, I think our kids can hardly live in this world without getting inundated with politics, which is a big part of social sciences, but civics
Mhm.
is the most critical, because that's where how their voice engages in their future. And so to the degree that we can. Yeah, I'd love to see our standards focused on civics and, but anyway, the curriculum addresses that, that'd be terrific. I'll probably ask that question when you come.
It will
forward.
definitely address civics,
Yeah.
and I have a copy of the ODE social science standards here.
I just happened to have it.
89 pages long.
Name on it.
I texted it to myself for later, like I can't read 89 pages right now.
It's kind of interesting to see what the standards look like in kindergarten versus like 9th grade, but yeah. You're welcome to that.
There's a movement of stoicism, I think, in particularly young men right now, which is interesting to me, but the voice I keep hearing from young men is, I want more skills in rhetoric. My value will come in how I can communicate my ideas and my skills in communicating ideas. And I thought that was incisive, but yeah.
As I was saying, that's why I think, as we've been looking at curriculums these last couple of years, elevating student discourse. It's like, how do you have dialogue? How do you have debate? How do you have discussion? How do you build on something that someone else said as opposed to just throwing it out there and, right, like, how do you engage in meaningful discussion, meaningful dialogue in ways that actually move the dial? And so that's not just social science, but also in math and in language arts, like all the way across the board, really thinking, how do we elevate that student voice and provide opportunities to talk? And just on a side note, completely unrelated, as cell phones have gone away, student interaction and talk with each other has increased, and that's what we keep hearing anecdotally time and time again. Is that students are forced to engage and interact because they're no longer behind a phone. Anything else?
Is this last slide?
Yes.
I'm good.
Yeah, it's on mine.
We'll be
Thank
back with.
Thank you.
No, you're having the sessions because I want some.
Yeah, well,
I do.
on it. Well, there are some fantastic social studies teachers in our district, and if they can do a couple of sample lessons, like, they're amazing. I'd love for you to see their work in action. Even more than me, so.
See if they can control a parent discourse.
Game on, right?
All it actually, yeah.
We live stream it because.
I got a couple teachers who I think are up to the task, so,
Okay,
all right,
okay.
thank you much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Next
Okay,
up,
from Michelle.
in MTSS implementation, multi-tiered systems of support implementation update with Michelle Cook.
Go to the next slide. So this is just the annual update on implementation of MCSS and in thinking about the board conditions, really because it's such a systems focused framework, it really touches on everything. Because it's working across all the tiers. So one of the next slides, Sarah. I made a couple little edits, so it might look a little bit different. I didn't have the spacing on the slide, so I had to fix that, but
I'll
Listen to
update
this
it
present-
the packet after.
Okay. And I added one other data slide. So just in terms of what I'm covering today, just revisiting the definition, not everybody knows what MTSS is, and so I wanted to clarify that, share a little bit of implementation data. And just talk a little bit about some of the hurdles that we face, because implementation is very complex and it just takes time. And but also show the accomplishments, because we're definitely seeing some movement, we're starting to see some impact. And so that's exciting to see, because it is. So the next slide 4 there, Sarah. We've taken the approach of equity-driven MTSS because MTSS, standing for multi-tiered systems of support, is really technical in nature, but how you implement it is where you're going to get your results. And so we really, with our inclusion plan, wanted to center equity and really continue to strive for equitable outcomes as we're implementing a very technical structure. And so with the emphasis really is getting your adults organized into teams, having super clear protocols that are really efficient, screening data, looking at all different types of data, both student outcome data, implementation data, student and family voice data, a lot of different data sources. You're looking at all of that and always then with the question, depending on which level you're looking at the universal level, and that little graphic there at the bottom shows that, you know, you're kind of looking at the different layers of support across it, but at that universal level, you're really asking the question, how well is our system supporting our students? Are we making the shifts and the adjustments that are increasing and improving, moving us towards more equitable outcomes? And then you start looking at additional layers of support. Those teams have different protocols. They're screening data, they're identifying supports for kids, and then you have intensified support teams. So all the teams, they work sort of as a nice flow of continuum, but each team is organized different, focused on different things, and delivers supports in different ways. And so that's why that's part of the complexity, is because it's layered. And it has layers even within the layers. So next slide. This is more for a reference, not something I'm going to speak in depth to, but as we approached the implementation of multi-tiered systems of support, we utilized the model from the Swift Schools organization out of the University of Kansas. It was important to us to select guidance that was research-based and evidence-based. And they are one of the national leaders, and so we've really utilized this framework. There's a lot of details in it. And it's not something that you implement all at once. It's something that you start with, where is this school? What pieces are in place? What are the next steps? And that's where this is ongoing improvement process. That's why coaching is really the critical piece of this. The University, the Swift Center also developed, they have some tools, and one of them that we use is called a fidelity integrity assessment. And it's a self-reflection process, and we are just about to do it for the 4th time. We do it as an instructional leadership team where we are going through, and there are 22, I'm sorry, you did not put the slide forward. Sorry, this is what I was thinking. Moved on my screen now. What happened? We go through and self-assess on 22 items. Where are we? And what we learned through our conversations and reflections are, what are the things that we've got the district structure for it? How do we help schools implement? And then there's things that are like, wow, we need to get work on that as a district, so that then we can begin to support our schools on that. And what it has done is it's sort of, there's so many ways to try to approach improvement in education. And it sort of put a frame around it and just says, here are the things that we want to focus on. And when we invest in these things and get those things flowing, that's the research behind this work. That's when you start to see improvements in student outcomes. But these are complex things. I think one of the examples I might share is adding STAR to the middle schools and high schools, having a universal screener for reading and math. That wasn't something that 10 years ago we had. It's something that like, oh, we need to have that so that we can have the data at the teams, so that the staff can be looking at the data and making decisions about how to help kids. So those are the sorts of things that take time, because you have to find the right assessments, and just, there's a lot of layers to it, and that's kind of why it takes time. We also have our schools utilize elements of this, and over the course of the school improvement planning process the last 4 years, we started with introducing 4 to zoom in on, and then went to 6. Last year we went to 8. And so this year, so we're slowly building our schools capacity, those leaderships teams, to be thinking about school improvement through this lens, in terms of the structures and the systems. And so there's a lot more to that, and I don't want to go into too much depth, but I wanted to show the data on how we're doing. So, and we're going to have another data point here that we'll be able to add soon. But when we first started, you'll see blue is where we started, and this particular tool is organized into sort of buckets of work. And that relates back to the previous slide where it kind of had them listed out. But what you can see is that each year, over time, more components are being implemented at the district level. And so as instructional leadership team, we're using this to figure out, what do we need to do to better support our schools? Because ultimately that's where the magic happens. And then if you go to the next slide, Sarah, you'll see that at the school level and at each of the levels, the schools are implementing more components over time. And so the good news is the trajectory is going the right way. But this is deep work, and this is, for example, implementation at a large comprehensive high school. It took, a lot of time to prepare a system that large, and the adults in a system that large, to know how to come together to screen data and identify supports for kids, because you're having to do all of that within the limitations of the time available, which is very limited. And how do you creatively find time? In some ways, you have to start certain things at the beginning of the new year after you've changed a master schedule to create time slots for the work to happen. So a lot of it's very, I find it fascinating and interesting. Some people find it like just really frustrating, but it's like a puzzle. And so it's just interesting to meet people where at schools where they are, find out what are the strengths, how do we build on those, what is the experience level, what do folks need to know, what coaching do they need, and all within this framework that just kind of helps us move forward and kind of, keep our eye on it, because sometimes you're like, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but somehow then you find it when the door opens and you find a way through. So any questions so far on that part? On that, it's just sort of, so these are those implementation tools, and these tools, the whole idea of measuring, I think I shared this at one of our last board meetings, of measuring our implementation is something that really hasn't been around a really long time in education. We look a lot at student outcome data, but we don't always look at, are we self-assessing the things and measuring those things? So try to use those tools. This is a little bit of attendance data that, John collects, and it's, this was shared a couple weeks ago, in the Monday news that goes out to all of our administrators. And, what's cool about this is that
In our
looking.
board updates. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I was like, it's not in this.
Oh,
one. I
it's
think
like
I saw that.
yeah.
Okay. But I think when we, what's nice about this is it shows, I mean, there's been a real, district-wide focus on attendance and really trying to get our teams at the school level within MTSS to be looking at data and making very concrete, specific, strategic moves to try to impact this data. And so this is a piece of, that, you know, there's lots of reasons why attendance may improve. And that's one of the hardest things in education is how can you draw a real clear cause, like, we did this, so that was the thing. Well, we also did this, this, and this, and so not sure which one, but those efforts together seem to be helping us move in the right direction. And so, as you can see, that overall more students are on track for attendance compared to last year at the same window of time, and in particular, the high school. So you guys have already seen this data, so I won't.
Well, I pointed out the cohort data to them too, like looking at. First graders from last year as second graders
Yep.
this year, to kind of just start to see like, that's if you're maintaining some of that growth over time. As kids go through your system, that also,
And you're
just
building
kind
a
of shifts the
habit.
culture.
Yeah.
There's
change
another
habits.
interesting thing not in this chart that's usually there, is the bell. Usually kindergarten is lower, and then you go up in those low grades, then you see this again too, but kindergarten is not showing that pattern. Kindergarten, first grade, we're showing higher attendance.
Yeah.
Seniors. Way to go, seniors.
Yeah, that one was.
High school, this is not unusual. This goes back decades, although this is lower than past decades. This is, high school is low attendance.
Yeah, but the green is.
High green is higher, yeah. It's great.
And it's at all the grade levels higher, and it's like, yeah, you know, a lot higher.
What she's not showing you, there's, all the programs have also shown improvement commensurate with the grade levels.
I think I ask this every single time we talk about attendance data, so. Sorry, but I can never remember. Just apologize ahead of time. Attendance. For elementary, it doesn't matter. For the secondary grades, it's based on half of your day.
A full day is more than 4 periods absence,
Okay,
and then half a day is after that.
if you come to
Yeah.
5, then
Yeah.
it's counted as a full day of attendance.
I'm not sure how the system actually quantifies that. I'm taking that as global numbers out of Synergy, well, it's
Yeah.
to the database, but it comes from Synergy.
Yeah.
But John, it is based on, yeah, a student can miss 2 periods at the high school and still be considered present all day. If they miss more than 5 periods, then the count as being absent all day.
Or have a reduced schedule,
Yes.
right? Like,
Or get,
they
thank
might
you.
only take.
Yeah.
If they've
Yeah,
got
like
4
my
classes
senior
and they're
will have
gone
that
too,
class
then they're
next
gone for the
semester.
day.
Yeah. So, and that kind of does explain why seniors is higher. Because a lot of them have a reduced schedule, so if they miss one or any,
Yes, that's
I
exactly.
mean, my senior only has
Faster.
4, so if she misses any, she's
Yep.
not there that whole day.
Well, and the other thing, when we think about this data through, MTSS lens, we're oftentimes looking at, the percentage of students that are on track. And the tool that we use, Panorama, what's helpful about that tool is when we start digging into like students who are showing up in the at-risk or the intensive support zone, is we can then look in and see like, what periods is this for the student?
Yeah.
Are we
right.
always
Always
missing
third
first?
or-
We're always missing first period, but we might be showing up as on track, or we might always be right after lunch, while we just seem to never come back after lunch.
Right.
And so there's some different ways to view the data but overall, we're seeing progress here, and I didn't realize that we have done this slide already, so I apologize for.
Very confident there will be some regression this month.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
data is way up,
Yeah, well, and
staff and kids.
yeah, everybody
Yeah.
said, yeah, we're gonna get through February. So in terms of just looking at sort of the hurdles and successes, one of the things that we're seeing, I mentioned Panorama, that is the data visualization tool that we use, and it's the sort of in the moment that when the teams sit down together and like at the additional support, that middle level, they're screening data for, they might look at, let's look at 10th graders who are, whose attendance is in the at-risk zone. And let's find out who's, get a group of kids and then activate a support for them. that tool, Panorama is what is used for that because it gets a little bit more specific and the filters allow you to filter for different focus groups. And that's where we then document what's the support that we've activated for the kiddo. So then what you have is that you have a student that has, there's a note in there and every teacher that works with that student can see what's happened for the student. And so it's really helping with communication. It's not just the data visualization, it's also the let's document it. And then should they need more intensive supports over, say, a couple of years, everything that's been done for the student is listed in there. And so you start to get some efficiencies that way because the information's right there at fingertips.
So the classroom teacher accesses Panorama, or do they see
They can.
Panorama nodes inside of Synergy?
No, they're separate systems. Information from Synergy, some, not all of it, but some information from Synergy feeds into Panorama every night. And so any grade data that's updated, attendance, behavior, grades, they'll see those things. Along with program assignments. So like, if I'm a special educator, I can find, all the students that are on my caseload, and I can be looking at their grades and scan, that sort of thing. And teachers can see for every period, they can see each class period and they can see how their kids are doing. And based on school, this is not something where every single school is fluent and running with it. This is where, as schools are getting ready, we invest deeper. All of the support staff that are providing supports for kids are definitely, that's where we've started. There are places where classroom teachers are still not there because we have to build the why and how is this helping me? Because we have to change the workflow in the school to get it into the workflow. And that's what part of this, the implementation takes time. But we've seen a 35% increase since from last fall to this fall. And so that's what we're seeing every year because we're tracking the analytics with Panorama is how much are we using this? Because if we're paying for this, we need to be using it and making sure that we're starting to see the impact with getting data at people's fingertips so that we're responding in real time and getting more success going for kids. So then that starts to show up in the student output data.
I'd like to ask the question that I don't intend to put anybody in an uncomfortable spot, but is there resistance to implementing Panorama? You kind of alluded to the question of why am I doing this?
I think anytime with the amount of responsibility and the scope of the work of an educator, people's plates are overflowing all the time. And so if you're going to ask people, I want you to start doing something, there has to be a really good reason why. And there has to be a way to help people see, well, when you start implementing something like this is where it actually can streamline things and it can make the flow go better for you. I think a great example is like at the high school. All of this, like what's happening for kids, when people begin to realize that's less email, that's less spreadsheets I have to find because it's reorganizing it, but it changes how people do their work. And when you're getting adults that are running 110 miles an hour to change their flow, it just takes a little bit of time. So that is the work that it takes with professional development, experience, coaching. It just takes time to give people those opportunities to learn. And what we're finding is some schools, they found it, they took off with it, and you're like, great, what can we do to help you? And others are like, there's so many moving parts, and you've got to figure out if you add it here, you've got to systematically change it because it impacts a lot of other things so that it doesn't get messy where it's some people are using it and some people aren't, and then it's like clunky, and then it gets a bad name and people are like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a dance.
But the schools that are further with implementation are finding those efficiencies.
Yes.
And so it's like you have to do the work up front and go through some clunky, awkward stage almost, some teenage years.
Learn something new.
Learn some
Yeah.
things
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
then you start to benefit if you can kind of push through that.
Yeah.
So that's true with our teaming structures too, like the efficiency of how a team works as they're trying to navigate, these conversations around students gets more efficient with experience and practice.
Yeah. But we're definitely, so much further than when we first started with Panorama. And the Panorama people are like, wow, you guys are really using this, and they're excited about our data. And they're like, can you talk to, you willing to talk to Salem Kaiser about this? They're adopting now, so it's like, yeah, we'll talk about it. So
Are there a lot of regional districts that use Panorama?
I don't know.
We were on the cutting edge. It was I don't know about
Yeah.
regional now. It was
Yeah.
rather new when we did it. We got a price break. We helped them learn a lot. They helped us learn a lot. It's getting pretty efficient now.
But Salem Kaiser just adopted it.
Yeah, that's a big
They
deal.
want to talk to us, yeah, so. Yeah, I mean, other things, just the thought of what we're starting to see now is, like, for example, the high school model, there's pieces of that we've got a middle school going, hey, we can do that, and then we can start to align. And so as you start to get these models that are working well, and then people are learning from other people, and that's sort of the momentum that starts to build over time. And so we're definitely seeing more of that. We saw quite a bit of that at the elementary level, a lot of like additional support teaming structures. There was a school that developed a great way to do it, and that was starting to spread. And now they're just, you start to get some success going and people get excited and then they start sharing and then it just starts to build momentum. So we're definitely starting to see that and people asking more questions and, hey, can I go look at that team or go see that? So that's exciting to see. And then, of course, I mentioned the systematic implementation in our school improvement planning process, using the systems health assessment as part of that, I think has been a strong move towards helping build our capacity to always be looking at school improvement through much more of a systematic research-based framework. Hurdles, that time is always the biggest thing because it takes a lot of professional development. It takes time to work with people to design changes and adjustments that fit their context, because you can't just say, everybody do this, go do it. It's like, how does this work in your building? Because people have different people that, all the things. And then of course, coaching, because it just, you have to show up every week. Sometimes it's, you meet with the assistant principal to prepare for the meeting because they're learning how to run these sorts of meetings. And so you're just doing lots of coaching along the way, side by side, but people are excited and they're going. And to implement it at large comprehensive high school is kind of like, it's a really hard thing. And I'm super proud of Gresham High School because they're rocking it over there. They're just doing amazing. Yeah, so you have to go slow to go fast. Here's the punchline.
First and last.
All right, any questions? That's what I got.
I apologize for my slide discipline. Because everybody's getting to the question slide and I've asked 500. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah. Policy.
Yay.
Board.
Four real easy ones. They won't generate any discussion at all.
Yeah, in light of the reality that we have 4 current members here,
Yeah.
and so any passage would take it. Yeah,
Who
absolutely.
are here tonight.
Nonetheless, it would take unanimous approval for any one of
Right.
these.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can.
Do any of them have urgency on it?
Table.
None of them have urgency.
And then do we have
Do we need to do budget committee appointment?
time on our help the next couple agendas? Because I think they
That's
were
good.
kind of full.
The one that may need some discussion is artificial intelligence, which isn't as controversial.
These are all gonna.
They will. Oh, that's true. You're right. Never mind. I'll take it back. You're right. Yeah,
It's
they
sweet of
will.
you to think that.
I
but
know. I was
The
trying to be
reality
optimistic.
is,
I think we could look at adding a work session before
Yeah.
the next business meeting.
Uh-huh.
And I think we can,
but I think we did look at that already. Wasn't there already a
It's
possible one there?
pretty full. Yeah, I think that one is gonna actually probably be March.
Okay. Okay. Continue on, Bill.
The direct answer is none of them are urgent. All of them will take a lot of discussion.
I mean, it's on the agenda that was already approved, so I'm beholden to the board.
And the chair can say,
I think that in light of the volume of discussion and lack of
and then.
colleagues on the board, I
Yeah.
think it's worth tabling and we can work to try to get it on a near term.
Well, as long as there's no time constraints, we can eventually get it on.
Right.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
or a couple at a time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be all four.
Okay, budget committee appointments.
Got my name on it, but actually, it's
I'll-
name on it,
I'll-
and it really needs to be you, I think.
Um,
I don't know.
We, Holly and I had an opportunity to review a number of outstanding applications, narrowed the field and interviewed 3 candidates this afternoon prior to this meeting, and I'll let Holly speak her piece too, but I feel like each year we say it, and each year it seems more and more and more true. Just the quality of folks who are willing to step up for students in this community is a real testament to it. Incredibly talented, gifted, alert people, and I'm incredibly grateful that we have any number of candidates that we could be very proudly recommending to the committee tonight, or to the board tonight. So so with that, after those interviews and through kind of a narrow evaluation, we want to recommend to the board Kelby Whittington to serve in position 6 on the budget committee.
Right.
So because of the awkwardness, I will just move that the board appoint Kelby Whittington to position 6 on the budget committee,
Provided that she accepts.
provided that she accepts.
We told them all we were say it, so we should do that.
So you made the motion, so maybe just make a second.
I can second.
And now open for discussion.
I do have a discussion point, but I don't know that it's necessarily part of this motion, but I do have a comment I want to make about the process in general when we're done. So if that's okay, so I'm okay with the motion as it is. Or do you want me to
Okay.
make my discussion about? What it is it's not having any of the positions, not having the positions all be filled in the same way. I think we need to look at the historical, if someone's in the position and wants to keep doing it, we don't list that as an open position. I would like for us to review that and if we have a term that's expired and someone wants to stay in it, great, they put in an application and so can anybody else. But the idea of, I want to stay, so, okay, that position's closed now, I think we need to heavily revisit that, because then you're just perpetuating someone that you're comfortable with and that you know gets appointed to that position.
Okay.
And I like Garrett, I like what he has done, but I also think the opportunity to say, then let's make sure that you're still the one, and is there somebody else who's really interested? So that's moving forward. I'd like to have that be our method of doing things. So
I think that it's a long way out, but I do wonder about maybe having a more robust discussion about that in August, like at our pre-year.
that would work. Yep. I would
Because
appreciate
I
that.
appreciate that input, Chris.
Okay.
and I understand it, and I even think I agree with you. Imagine that.
Have some more sugar.
Little bit of background for this candidate, since that might be a question. I think all the applications are available to the board if you want to look at them, but this person works in the corporate world, is a former educator. Has a passion for education, but actually works in compliance on a global level. So a keen understanding of, or expressed a very strong professional understanding of rules, interacting with people, how groups make decisions, how groups advise decisions. But in addition to all 3 candidates that we did interview today, the just incredible amount of research that they brought into they were very aware of the challenges that are in front of us and very willing to accept the challenge anyway. So that would be the end of my discussion. Any other discussion? Okay, so the motion is to appoint Kelly Whittington to position 6. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, Sarah, you'll inform, or is that, and I'd even asked Chris in the past, how has
I think in the past, the chair
okay.
contacted them, since you
Okay.
guys did the interviews.
We told them that they'd be contacted tonight. And so maybe if you could do a provisional. We'll talk about that after, how we communicate with them, but I will happily call them. I don't think it will be tonight.
Yeah.
All right, and we have a request for tree removal, Dr. Klinger.
Yes,
this was a request that came this week that has a timeliness factor to it, so it's been added to the agenda. The description there really, you know, kind of sums up the situation. Hex Investments, who is the developer that is purchasing our Southwest property, has requested access to the property before the close of escrow to remove trees. And the reason for that is there's a Migratory Bird Treaty Act that provides protections for trees with any nests, eggs, or young. And some of those protections start February 1st. And so the purchaser's concern or developer's concern is that if they're not able to remove those trees before February 1st, that it could delay their project. And so they have made this request of us. We are not projected to close on the property until March.
Any questions, board?
Yeah, I didn't realize that the closing of the property was that far out. And are there any other considerations? Is it, if this was the only thing, is there anything else that? Now, I'm not sure. It would hold up the closing, because I thought it was a done deal. And that it was between them and the city, and that we were out of it at that point.
The city has done their final approval of the development, and the city has approved the removal of these trees. It just becomes, and that just happened, I believe, last week. So then it becomes this timeliness of this February 1st timeline.
Right, but I guess I'm just
For
not
that.
quite sure why we're being asked. If it's between the
Because
people who own, right, and that's why I thought it was.
We're still the
closed,
owner of the
right.
property.
So I guess I'm just kind of in general,
Yeah, right.
is there anything else that's gonna keep it from closing? Because I didn't realize there was anything that's still,
Already.
Right.
yeah, that it wasn't already closed.
Nothing that we anticipate, but it has not closed yet.
Okay.
And I did consult with legal counsel about this. I had questions about liability in terms of, you know, we're cutting down 114 trees. What does that mean in terms of if something happens? What does that mean if there are migratory bird evidence? And so the decision making around that. And it was recommended that we decline.
Legal counsel recommended decline. I mean, I didn't need that opinion necessarily, although it's helpful to kind of process my thoughts. My thinking is I think there's just too much up in the air, and I'm uncomfortable with it myself, the request. For any number of reasons that I'd be happy to share, but don't think it might be appropriate to share right now, so.
It just feels awkward to me, and it does feel like we're not owners of that property anymore.
No, we are.
But I mean, we are,
Yeah,
because
right.
we shouldn't be, you know,
Right.
I thought we'd closed on it, that we weren't, and so now it just makes me a little bit.
Also, I haven't been a part of all the conversations, but I know
Right.
it's been a hot topic.
Yeah.
So
Right,
to also like be a part of something that would also just like degrade any trust or like anything like that, like the community, like just.
I would just add, I don't know all the stipulations, but if you followed Gresham city engagement over the past couple of years, tree code is a big deal. And the removal of existing trees is a big deal. And I on that basis, so I guess I am saying one of them that I'm fairly uncomfortable saying out loud. I just I don't know enough to approve, and I'm not just gonna take the request and recommendation of a developer to make that choice, so.
Especially if legal counsel's advising.
Yeah.
Against.
There's not a benefit to us,
Right.
right? Like it
Right.
supports the developer and the work that they're doing, but yeah, I mean, and they know that it's a request that may not be honored.
mhm.
So do we need to take action
The recommended motion, Sarah, this is where the technicalities of things, there is a recommended motion if you did want to approve it, but if.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not
If no one
approving
wants
it,
to make a
you wouldn't
motion.
take action to not do something.
Right.
So
And we-
if you're not going to approve it, then you would.
We advise.
Just,
the
yeah.
superintendent
For
to-
decisiveness, there could be a motion to deny.
Yeah.
Which is
You
action,
could, yeah.
but
Or a motion to not take action.
Or
So
a
that's a
motion
weird-
to
that's
authorize
taking
the
action to not take
superintendent
action.
to
You
communicate
could.
our decision to the.
I think you could do what Blake
Developer.
said, though, that you have a motion to deny the request.
I think to button it up. I think a motion might be helpful, but I do wanna. I hear the hesitancy because. Like I just
Mhm.
don't see why we need to make a choice. It's kind of your, so,
Yeah, yeah,
just
just go ahead and put words in my mouth, I'm not sure what I'm full of sugar right now. so,
yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
trying to
no,
be sensitive to why
Yeah,
your wording was different.
yeah,
You can just say, I move to
It-
decline the.
Or can we
Or
move to,
Can't.
move to approve and then vote no.
Gosh, we are, it's too late. We are too late.
can we move to direct the superintendent to communicate our decision to the.
We haven't made a
to the-
decision if we haven't voted on anything.
Yeah.
No.
There's no decision unless you make a motion and
Fair.
vote on it. Cause
I
then the
would lean, like,
superintendent.
if we are going
Yeah.
to make a motion, I would lean towards what Blake said, that
I think that's.
to
Yes,
make a
move
motion to
to-
deny the request.
That you could supplement with and direct superintendent communicate, but I don't think we need to do
That's a
that.
standard, I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah,
a
no,
standard,
it's-
He
so,
would
be an
communicate anyway, because
alternative
the
to-
request came
yeah.
through her
Yeah.
office to go to the board.
so if it's just a simple move to deny Hex Investments LLC's request to move 114 trees from the Saltcrest property prior to the close of escrow, I'd make that motion.
I would second that.
Yes, it's moved by Chris, second by Holly to deny. Hex Investment LLC's request to remove 114 trees from the salt.
No, no, yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 4-0.
Mhm.
Who's second with that?
Okay.
I know, it's weird to say aye when you're.
I feel like I would pull a John in that moment just for funsies.
Discussion item, school tours. Here's, yeah, oh, thank you.
Okay.
I mean, or do
You
you,
forgot you printed those, Tracy?
Okay.
because you haven't heard enough of my droning. I'll introduce, so, we're framing out the strategic planning retreat that is scheduled for February. And one of the concepts that, shoot, I'll just say I'm kind of excited about, was that we wanted to plan part of the day by touring the facility to provide context to some of the discussion items that are gonna be coming at us. And intersect that with budgetary considerations, just have that fresh in our mind as we approach the budget season. So, as she is so skilled at doing, Tracy has taken a very rough idea and put some real teeth to it. And so we want to just have a chance to hear from the board about Tracy and her team probably provided, yeah. Didn't mean to single anybody out.
I don't have.
I don't think that's what the hot was.
It's just me droning. Okay, so we've laid out some concepts and just wanted to provide a window of discussion for the board. Right now, we're considering this would be in the morning, as you can see, and we would have we would convene the meeting at the last stop. Tracy and team have been in consult with OSBA to really clarify the rules about what constitutes a meeting, make sure we're clear of legal hurdles, and we're gonna make sure to abide by that and probably provide some written rules for the board to make sure we abide. But
Okay,
it'll provide context to the discussion, and these are the schools.
okay.
And these schools were selected after the idea actually came from the long range facilities plan conversation when that presentation happened, and there were questions that surfaced, and I think someone at the point was like, we need to like see some of these facilities. So the selection of the facilities here are based on some of the questions that were surfacing from those conversations, which is why it is okay for us to do these tours in terms of its follow-up to work that's already happened, to just continue to clarify and build context. But you can kind of see under each location, some of the priorities for each, and what you see by being there. So with Gresham High School, of course, a comprehensive high school, there's a lot of things to see, but the board in recent years has made an investment in turf. We can see that while we're there. There have been some questions about Ray and Flex and folks not having visited, that portion of Gresham High School. Gresham High School is also one of our facilities that has new sections and old sections. And so how do these like additions and some of this bond work all kind of go together? So it creates an interesting opportunity to see a lot of those kinds of things all in one spot. Hall is on the list. They are one of our lower enrollment schools. If you're looking at the long range facilities planning. And we also had a conversation at that meeting about how that doesn't mean that there's like empty space. And so I think seeing that firsthand, that schools are using their spaces really strategically is something to see. Hall also has some specialized programs that would be I think beneficial to see, and how that impacts space usage as we think about music and PE and different opportunities for students. And then West Orient is one of the two schools that was East Orient and West Orient were the lowest scoring or the most in need of work. And so it seems appropriate to spend a little time in one of those facilities. So I put West Orient on here. It's a maze, and it's a building that has had lots of additions and lots of different things happen over time. And then we're getting an experience at each of the levels. So that's my thinking behind why some of this happened, and totally open to feedback, or if there's other questions that people have, then happy to help kind of structure something around that.
I like it. I'd like to have another event another time, but yeah, this I think, because it came out of the long range facilities. It's also been a question I've thought about, having been involved in the bond, just to show people, here's what we did and here's what still isn't done. So I think you did a nice job showing this, and we'll just sit in separate sections on the bus so we don't talk.
We were gonna be on a bus.
Probably.
Well, I thought we could get a little van and we could drive around, we could have snacks.
This is a
Ooh,
plan.
plan.
Yeah.
Are we gonna put a big sticker together we drive on the van?
I could wear a t-shirt. I had a t-shirt.
We could draw a poster ahead of time.
Brenna's inviting herself. That's actually just, Chris, that's really affirming of the choice. I really value what you think, because I know we've together been through a lot of these processes, you know. And I also think it's kind of a de facto icebreaker. We're not gonna be talking, we're not gonna be talking board business, so might as well be talking about each other's lives. See who each other is. Hear all about quilting from Chris.
There you go. Yeah.
So anyway, okay. Are there specific things that you wish were on this list, or that, especially with Brenna, your connection, your understanding of Gresham, or the things that you?
I'll just, my only question is, what if like things come up after viewing it? Like, what do we do with the information afterwards? Like, I don't know, I always have questions about like the turf. That's like, and like the current,
Questions are different than decision.
Right,
Right?
and so when we,
So-
when
so
we
then
get
like
back to
all
the.
of this can like happen
Right.
in the moment.
So what I would suggest is we go and we do the tour.
Yeah.
This is gonna be our day of a retreat. We get back to the retreat. Our agenda item when we get back is debrief.
Yep, I was.
And so then we can do debrief, which will be on camera. It'll be an agenda item.
Okay, that's
And
great.
it's a conversation and not a decision.
Yeah.
Because then it keeps it very clear that we're information gathering while we're on the bus, and we're not discussing it as a board. Okay,
And then always one-on-ones. Questions later, yeah.
And we'll be in, like, if this is a concept, sounds like we're wanting to move forward with, we'll invite Terry Taylor to be a part of it as well. There will be things that he heard you say in that conversation that I may have forgotten, or he'll know some nuances where he can add to that, as well, but, yeah, we'll see.
I'll be able to give a history of two of these buildings going back to the 19 teens. And there will be a test when it's over.
Yeah, so he'll be here. He'll be- Sarah, you're on deck. But I do think it'll be fun and a good opportunity.
Will we have other opportunities outside of this, like to do something like this again as a board and tour
I
some of
hope
those
so.
other schools?
I hope
As
so.
like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
if it
I
happens-
mean, we love it. We can do it whenever we want.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just need to make sure this one's successful. Then we're all gonna.
Yeah.
So,
And we did want to utilize the retreat day because it is time, it's already on your calendar, it's already reserved, and it just seems like this can do better. Make sure we can get everybody there. Okay,
Sounds like nobody likes it, Kissy.
I'm excited.
Snacks, you promised a
Thank you,
snack,
everybody.
we're in.
There will be snacks.
future board agenda topics. I keep saying, you know, we're working through that list. We have worked through that list. So if you have
Double check.
requests,
Add 'em up.
use the form to submit. And we will, it's not like we have a lack of business. We added this to the schedule. Think of, we originally didn't have any of this planned and now we had all of this, so.
Yeah.
All right. With that, announcements. Oh.
How are we doing on the filling the position? We'll get a quick update on.
I actually don't have the latest update.
We have, we've
do
received,
six?
6 applicants for the board vacancy position.
Okay.
The application period is still open through January 30th. So
Okay.
they still have another week or so to submit
Okay.
applications.
The applicants, did you say?
Wait,
Second.
didn't that come out in the email? Was that from you?
Yeah, so we sent a notice before winter break, and then once we returned from winter break, we sent a reminder so that people knew, hey, it's still open if you want to apply.
There's an Outlook article, so good job on the communication front.
Yeah.
And we had set aside for interviews,
I know.
we have a wonderful plan
Well-
for your February.
My birthday's in there too, so
So-
we'll be.
Maybe-
So the
Mine's a
retreat
big-
is.
Wait, is it yours?
Mine is one of these.
Oh.
The retreat, the board retreat is February 20th, and so we had talked about possibly interviews February 12th, which is the Thursday prior. We don't have a work session
Right before
in February.
The legislative thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
February was fun.
Cool.
And then March.
And, but then. you get
So-
full rate on Saturday.
Yeah, that's my fault. We'll confirm that we have sufficient attendance, but the intention was to try to carve out a whole Thursday.
Mhm.
No work session, no nothing, just talk,
Just interviews,
rocket please, so.
which is, yeah, looking like there were a few hours.
Yeah. So we'll have snacks. I don't know what.
More snacks.
Um,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, announcements, just keep in mind the legislative day that we were invited to, February 13th, that will owe responses February 5th. It's only 2 weeks away. And with that, there being no other business, the February 5th will have regular board business. Yeah, that's good with that, so. Being no other business for the board, we're adjourned
Thank you.
at 9:14.
And our policy meeting got.
I saw that.